Okay, this is really exciting because today, depending on what time you're listening to this or reading the newsletter, I am launching Comms Question Time, which is the pilot shows. I am so excited about it. I've got 3 episodes I'm going to be releasing today with multiple scenarios. There's like a personal crisis comms reputation scenario. There's startups looking for advice too from the PR panel on there. So you are very welcome to have a listening to that to see what you think, and I would love to get your feedback. These are pilot episodes, so the whole point of them is to see what people do. And I'm looking at the data to see where people listen, where they drop off, and that sort of thing. From there, I will then decide whether to do a full show of it. Anyway, I hope you will find that really interesting. Just go to commsquestiontime.com, commsquestiontime.com, and there's a listen button on there which will show you all the different sort of major podcast apps that you can go to and get signed up for that. I think the fact that you listen to the Public Relations podcast, I think you are going to find that show really interesting because you're going to hear all these people working on PR scenarios and how they would tackle them. Right, we have got Thursday's PR Bites and a couple of stories that I have spotted, and I've also got a scenario for you to see what you would do in this particular scenario. As usual, all the links are in the written newsletter, which you can get instead of listening to me rabid on by going to the publicrelationspodcast.com and clicking on the newsletter button there, the publicrelationspodcast.com. So the first thing, I thought this was a good one from Adweek. Press releases are becoming over the top and it is starting to backfire, they said in Adweek. According to the article, between 2017 and 2023, the use of buzzwords like cutting edge and pioneering skyrocketed in US press releases, according to them. Companies are thrilled and excited at record levels, but the truth is, this flood of exaggerated language is turning off the very people it's supposed to attract, journalists. Reporters are very wary of these claims, and I can tell you as an ex-editor that you don't even really see them. In fact, actually, the moment someone says exciting, I care less than I would have done if they'd left that out. If your press release needs words like groundbreaking or revolutionary, it might not be either. Now, you might find a very different audience with the public generally, but with the journalists themselves, this kind of stuff, they're not going to use it. They're highly unlikely to use it unless they're absolutely desperate. They're not going to use that phrase, and it's actually going to put them off. So the challenge here is fierce to get noticed, isn't it? You know, brands are competing for attention in this overstimulated world, but instead of leaning on these inflated claims that no one cares about, PR pros should focus on substance, was the conclusion of Adweek. As one expert in there put it, don't make a claim, substantiate it. Rather than hype, show real value, and journalists and your audience will pay more attention. That's what they were saying there. What else have I got for you? Oh, yeah, the McDonald's story last week with Donald Trump. I don't know if you saw this one. I meant to include it on Tuesday, but I completely forgot to include it because I was doing that long analysis of the sort of web of influence in the way that PR and big narratives develop in society and how to use that as well to your advantage. If you didn't hear that, listen to the last episode of that. But anyway, what I was going to mention is I thought it was really interesting to see how McDonald's handled that story of Donald Trump visiting one of their restaurants last week. He had been invited by a franchise owner. And while people in the industry know that McDonald's is made up of franchises, the public often see it as just one company. So when a figure like Donald Trump turns up, the big question was, how would McDonald's respond? And initially, McDonald's stayed quiet, which raised speculation. But when they did respond, they did so quite cleverly. Unlike a couple of years ago, where brands might have taken a firm stance from one point of view or another, or said, we don't welcome them, or whatever, and then faced a backlash for doing it, McDonald's walked a really good middle line. So they pointed out that both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris enjoyed McDonald's, saying they're welcome like anyone else's to their stores. Now, that's a very hard message to disagree with, no matter which side of the political spectrum on, because if your side is being welcomed, you can't really complain. Then they built on that by acknowledging that Trump had had a great experience at the restaurant, and they addressed another narrative that had been circulating, whether Kamala Harris had ever worked at McDonald's, and they said, we were delighted that she worked there. So by supporting the stories of both figures, Trump's visit and Harris's work history, they managed to balance the narrative perfectly by supporting both sides. And the result, you couldn't tell which way they were leaning, and the story's already died. No one's really talking about it anymore, apart from in the media perspectives. Whereas if they'd taken one point of view, they would have alienated half their market, and everyone would have got, it would have just caused furore for weeks and weeks and weeks. This was a great example of how McDonald's avoided any further controversy by carefully acknowledging both sides. And I thought they did that really, really well. You can find plenty of stuff online if you just search for McDonald's and Donald Trump for background to that one. Before you go off and have Have a listen to Comms Question Time. Seriously, I think you're going to find it really interesting. 3 shows. Have a look at commsquestiontime.com. Let me round up today, though, on PRBites, and that is a fictional scenario. Here's a scenario. Settle in wherever you are, and let me tell you a story. You are managing communications for a large national airline that has been caught in a scandal after several passengers were stranded due to overbooking on recent flights. Overbooking is a practice that your airline uses to stay economically viable. You know that flying with empty seats costs the airline money, so they always sell a few extra seats on the assumption that some passengers won't show up. And this helps them keep ticket prices lower for everyone, or at least that's what your marketing department are telling you. But when more passengers arrive than there are seats, things go wrong. And it has. And of course, it's not the marketing department that has to deal with this. It's you as the PR person. So we've got stranded passengers who are venting on social media, and news outlets are questioning your airline's policies and saying you're unethical. You're under pressure to respond quickly. The CEO is demanding that you step in and sort this story out to prevent further damage to the company's reputation. Now, as usual in our scenarios, you have just one option that you can pick from 2 that I'm going to give you. So there's always hundreds of ways you can approach these things, but I'm going to give you just 2 and think about which one you would do. Would you do option 1? Would you hold a high-profile press conference with the CEO personally addressing the overbooking issue, announcing a temporary suspension of the overbooking practice, and committing to an internal review of the policies? Or would you, number 2, release a well-produced documentary-style behind-the-scenes video showing how overbooking works from an airline's logistics perspective, including stories from ground staff, while introducing a customer compensation scheme to alleviate frustration? Gosh, this is a tough one, isn't it? I think the problem you face with option 1 is that while it shows immediate leadership from the top, it also might frame the issue as a bigger deal than it needs to be, because this is happening with all airlines all the time, drawing even more media attention and making it you that is the subject of this criticism. A press conference, opens the door to tough questions that you might not be fully prepared for, leading potential missteps as well. However, a strong apology could make the airline appear transparent and serious about customer care, potentially calming the backlash as well and saying, we're doing something. Now, with option 2, you're offering a unique, less confrontational approach by educating the public on the complexities of airline logistics. However, the risk is that it could seem too passive or dismissive in the face of people's anger. Even with a compensation scheme, it might not feel immediate or personal enough for those affected. So, as usual, this is a dilemma, and I think this is what's fun about this, is that while there are always going to be better ways of doing this, if we have to choose from those 2 options, and I'm still struggling. So I think I would go for option 1. This is the one where the CEO suspends the overbooking for the moment while they review things. I think it is risky having a press conference and doing it this way, but you can always control a press conference to a degree with statements and taking only a couple of questions that are well managed. So it's risky, but I think the immediate acknowledgement of responsibility and personal response from the CEO could shift public opinion from outrage to trust in the company's willingness to improve. And it shows that you're doing something whereas the other airlines aren't. Because I think simply coming out with a documentary and trying to convince people that this is the way it works, it's just simply going to show, it's going to come across that you don't care, and it's going to, it could go either way. I'm still going for option 1 here. What would you do? I would love to know what your thoughts are. As always, let me know. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Richard Midson, Midson, Richard Midson, Midson, and I would love to hear from you. Don't forget to listen to Comms Question Time. It might be out now, or it might be out a little bit later, but go to commsquestiontime.com. You can subscribe there. And I think you're going to find it really interesting. Let me know what you think about it too. Be really interested to hear what you think of those episodes. I'm sure there's going to be improvements. I'm sure there's going to be stuff we can do better. No question, there's going to be stuff. I think some of the introductions were a bit long and rambly. I should have shut up. But I was trying to kind of get across the point about the value of PR. But I would be interested to hear what you think. So do let me know once you've heard those episodes. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's it for now. Have an awesome weekend, and I will speak to you next week. Bye for now.